Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Welcome to MotorWeek podcast number 42. I am John Davis, and joining me in Studio C at MotorWeek World Headquarters is our road test producer and two-wheeling reporter, Brian Robinson.
I didn't realize we had World Headquarters.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
What else would you call it? Never mind. Writer Shamit Choksi.
Hello, all.
And our associate producer and all-around car guy, Ben Davis.
Good to be here again.
Very good. And we're going to have our lightning round and MotorWeek mailbag. We'll get into that a little bit later in this podcast. But first, we're going to take a look at three of the vehicles we've been testing recently at MotorWeek. And Ben, I'm going to turn to you first. The Nissan Juke. I'll set the stage. The smallest crossover utility, I think that's four-door or five-door anyway, that's being sold in the U.S. Tell us a little bit more about this very unusual little crossover from Nissan.
Very unusual indeed. In fact, personally, I think if it was in an 80s movie as a futuristic vehicle back then, it would have been the coolest vehicle anybody's ever seen. And, I mean, it's a gray area, too. You either like it or you don't like it.
Now, come on. You know it looks like...
I think it looks great.
You do. You like that little... all those people that didn't like the Pontiac Aztec, where are they?
No, wait, I didn't like that, but I like to call this car tastefully sci-fi, if you will.
Okay, that's a good one.
When you first look at it, you don't know... You assume that the bulges on top of the hood are the headlights because they look like every other car's headlights, but in actuality, those are the turn signal and running lights, and your headlights are actually down lower in the bumper, and even down lower than that, in a sci-fi looking skid plate-esque grille, you have fog lights. So it really is truly unique when a lot of other vehicles on the road aren't as edgy, unique, or tastefully sci-fi as this.
Now, the Juke is based on something else, and it's based on a very good something else, right?
It's Versa-based.
It's Versa-based.
And I believe the Cube is too, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's got that going for it. On top of that, you have a 1.6 turbo motor putting out 188 horsepower. This is the first time this motor's been used in the U.S.
It's a lot of power for such a micro or mini ute.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's a lightweight vehicle. It's fun to drive. And the power is where you want it to be. I would say anything over 2,000, and you got to hang on tight.
How would you compare this to the Kia Soul?
I would actually consider buying this.
With the Soul, now, what I was looking for is this seems like a real crossover. The Soul's just a front drive city car. This, though, you can get this all-wheel drive too. Right.
Yeah, I would say it's more of a street-based all-wheel drive than, say, an off-road-based all-wheel drive, obviously. But on the performance end of the all-wheel drive, they offer a torque vectoring system, which gives you front-to-back torque split, as well as across the rear axle, you have side-to-side. Right. So it's there to virtually eliminate any kind of torque steer that you might incur or nibble, anything like that.
I don't think anything else that small has torque vectoring.
No,
I don't believe it does.
Is it as small as it looks? I mean, the thing looks in the pictures, it looks tiny.
It isn't as small as it looks. No, it is as small as it looks, but I don't think it looks small. There's so much flavor and style and curve going on everywhere that...
Because the interior numbers are less than the Versa. I mean, is there that many people that were wanting a smaller crossover with less practicality than a compact car?
Well, all the range Nissan gives you in crossovers, I think they could afford to make something that sacrifices a little bit of interior room for a tremendous amount of styling.
But let's face it, this is a vehicle that was designed for Europe and Asia, where larger utilities are almost verboten.
That's true.
For one reason or another. So they just happen to be bringing it here because... there's more appetite for smaller vehicles. But I guess that's the big question. And let's go around the room. This is the smallest five-door crossover that anyone's going to put out this year. is there a market for it in the U.S.?
It slots in under the Rogue, correct? And the Rogue is
yes,
it's under the Rogue,
so,
and it's even slightly smaller than Mini's Countryman that's about to come out.
So the question is, I don't really think it has a segment. I don't think it has direct competitors. What I think is there are going to be things that it's cross-shopped against. I'm thinking Mazda 3.
I think they'll cross-shop against the Versa, personally.
And Suzuki SX4, it's
SX4.
It's not a far cry from that.
On the other hand, Nissan is so aggressive right now on pricing. They really have some of the best deals going, and they're gaining market share that, to have such a wide range of crossovers, something for every taste, I think this little Juke not only is it puts an exclamation mark on their efforts, and of course, it's unusual looking.
It's
a lot of people
unique.
love that.
Very
unique.
Love it or hate it.
And
so you liked it?
Yeah, it's filled with technology. I did like it.
It's a pretty cool looking little vehicle. Speaking of little vehicles, a vehicle that we had in here with us for about a week, and we've actually got it back now. The Mitsubishi iMiEV. Let me give you a little background. This is an all-electric city car that Mitsubishi already has on sale in Japan. It's been tested extensively here by American utility companies. It's to go on sale about a year from now in the U.S., under $30,000 before any tax credits. That's what Mitsubishi is hoping for. It has a stated range of about 80 to 100 miles. We had one in here during August, so we had 95 to 100-degree days. Impressions. Let's go around the table. What did you think of going all electric? I'm going to start with Shamit, because Shamit has the longest commute and spent the most white-knuckle hours in the car.
Yeah, no, I was definitely not sure as to whether this thing would get me. Well, I knew it would get me home, but I really was watching. I was watching the gauge. It tells you how many miles you have left or kilometers. I turned everything off. I was being very conservative.
You were sweltering.
I was. But by the time I got home, I still had half a charge. So, and that's a 35-mile commute.
Now, it never said on the range indicator, even though 100 kilometers is roughly 62 miles. We never saw anything like that. The most we saw was about 90 kilometers, or about 55 miles. We never saw anything that would equate to 100 miles.
That's right.
So, but even when it was on that 90 kilometers after it had been charged all day, you still got home and had plenty probably to come back to work.
It had 50 kilometers left. So I could have not charged it if I didn't want to, but of course I did to see how it would do on the way home. On the way back to work, I drove less conservatively, but coming back had things on. I was driving with a little more fervor, and it still did fine. I had plenty of charge left by the time I got back to MotorWeek.
Brian, any comments about our first truly all-electric motoring experience in a very long time?
I'm probably the least environmentally friendly person on the staff, but I love the thing. I spent a whole weekend with it, and I drove it all around. It's good about giving you instant updates on your mileage or your kilometers, so you can constantly monitor it. And with regenerative braking, you can add a lot of miles onto that. It just depends on how you drive it. There were times where I might go on a 10-mile span and only use up 2 miles of energy just the way you drive it. So you can stretch the mileage a lot longer than you think if you drive it carefully.
I should point out that we had a Japanese version, so it was right-hand drive, and speedometer and everything was in kilometers, not miles.
And it wasn't tiny. It was fairly roomy in there. It was narrow, though. It was almost with someone beside you in the front seat. It was almost like a bench seat. You put your arm around them. But it stayed solid. I had it up to like 130 kilometers an hour. And
speed racing.
Wow.
It stayed solid. That was all she could do.
That's what she would do.
Yeah,
so that equates into, roughly about 70?
70 miles an hour, somewhere around there.
Ben?
It was fun.
Comments?
I spent most of my time acclimating to right-hand drive. It's quirky and it's cool, but I think it's best suited for someone that works out of their home or something like that with not a whole lot of extracurricular responsibilities, i.e. taking kids to soccer or whatever. And basically just has to dart in and out for groceries and that kind of thing. And
you wouldn't
always
feel
has home as a home base.
You wouldn't feel comfortable relying on it as your only car for day in, day out service.
I don't think there's no way I could do that. There's
got to
no
be
way.
a second.
Yeah, but you basically, when we were testing it, brought up something very important about the unexpectedness of life and how that would impact you.
I would be always conscious of I would have certain point of no returns mapped out, more or less. If I had a commute, I would realize I get past this, I can't go back. I have to finish going to work for whatever reason. And if I get to work and for some reason I have to turn around and go back emergency, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, that's, I think, the one thing that's going to hamper electric cars in general, I'm talking about all electrics like this and the Leaf from Nissan, is that until you get that range up to something more than what would be equivalent to an eighth or a quarter of a tank of gasoline, people will be leery about depending on these for all purposes, or even as an everyday car. If you get downtown and you've got an emergency or you got to run to the airport, where there's no charging,
right,
what do? But on the other hand, for people that have it as a second car, like I took it home obviously and drove it quite a bit. I can see using something like the iMiEV as a second car. You want to go into town for dinner, you want to go grocery shopping, whatever. It's a great way to do it, and do it as cleanly as you can possibly do it.
And it's awesome not having to buy gas.
Yes, it's awesome not having to buy gas.
You have to remember to plug it in, though. You let the teenager take it out, and then they forget to plug it in.
No.
Go to work the next morning.
And we didn't find, we were able to plug it into 220 here at our MotorWeek offices, so it easily charged up during the day. And even overnight, where it took about 10 hours, it was no problem on 110, on just straight here.
So they're going to sell it with like a 2-hour quick charger.
Yeah, it's going to have a quick charger that will do like 80% of the charging in 2 hours or whatever. But anyway, very impressive, and I thought Mitsubishi deserves a lot of credit for basically trying to beat Nissan a little bit to the publicity punch anyway. I think they did a good job. Let's get back to something more traditional, and a car that we have long felt a great affinity for here at MotorWeek, and that's the BMW 5 Series. This is the new 2011 5 Series, not to be confused with the 2010 5 Series GT. New 5 Series, larger, looks and feels much more like a 7 Series. So the question is it still one of the world's premier sports sedans?
Yeah, they haven't changed it enough to take that title away. That's for sure. It's the 6th generation of the 5 Series. And it has gotten a little bit bigger, but I didn't think it was that much bigger. It certainly didn't feel any bigger driving at the track. It's still very nimble. Great handling. We had the twin turbo, I guess 535, which is an awesome engine. I love that engine all throughout the BMW lineup. The 3-liter that's below that is certainly adequate. The V8 above that is kind of overkill, really. The 535 is definitely the best engine. And
now I'm getting confused. Did that still have the twin turbo, or is that now the new engine with the 1 turbo?
Twin turbo V8.
That was the twin turbo V8.
Yeah,
The 6 is now going to the new Turbo 6 will be just a single turbo.
Yeah, they brought that back to a single turbo.
Right.
Putting out similar horsepower too, but now it's got crisper throttle response, and it's more efficient and less
and still
polluted.
300 horsepower.
Yeah.
I think it feels, the reason why it comes closer to the 7 is not just size, but technology. It's loaded with a lot of the same stuff that the flagship is.
And that was that not a problem? I mean, did that take away? Did all of that technology and flash and really poshness of the interior, did that take away from the essence of the car? A
lot of BMW files think it did, actually, from what I've been reading.
But I wonder if they've driven it, because that was exactly what I thought. I thought, this car's too cushy. But after I drove it, my jaw dropped. I thought, what a wonderful piece of machinery.
Yeah, the ultimate test is actually driving it, and so it passes.
So I think they pulled it off. A lot of time when manufacturers try to plush up a sports sedan, they ruin it. Not this case. Okay, let's go to our lightning round now. This is where we have 2 minutes to debate a topic, and we've got a really good one here today. When we hear Michelle ring the bell, we know the time is up, and the hook will come out and take us right out of the studio. Here it is. Newly designed window stickers that the government is proposing, and they're proposing they start for the 2012 model year, which really means they'd be on cars as early as January of 2011. Two proposals are under consideration, and there's a 60-day period going on right now for public comment. One option, which is the most stringent one, has these labels that have a whole lot more information than we've ever had before, including all sorts of environmental information about CO2 emissions and so forth. But here's the controversial aspect. They've got a big letter on them where they would grade the car or truck or whatever, A, B, C, or D, based on fuel economy. Now, there's another option which would keep pretty much the same sticker we have now, but put a little bit more information on it and wouldn't be quite so strident. So, what do you think's fair? What grading system is fair? What should the government do in your mind as an observer of the industry? And what do you think actually is going to happen? So we kind of got two questions here, and let's start the clock.
I think the grading system, I'm not sure the manufacturers, how they're going to go for it, seeing big letter grades on the sides of their cars.
How would you like to have a D on the side of your car?
And it would, we were talking earlier before we started about how they're going to compare the vehicles, what they're going to compare them to. Are they going to compare, to get a letter grade, all the compact cars with all the compact cars, or is it going to be all across the whole range of cars?
I think how they figure out the grading system is going to be very important, because if they grade within certain size or weight classes, that's one thing, and my suspicion is that would be deemed fair.
It just doesn't feel exact. It feels subjective. And in this day and age, people want to know this information. Information is power, so they want to know what environmentally this car is all about. But they need to be more objective about it. Give us facts, but the letter grade, it doesn't feel right.
But I know the star grading system for crash tests has gone over very well. I'm assuming that's what they're trying to do, is something that will emulate that. I wonder if they didn't miss the boat by not doing a star system instead of going to an A, B, C, or D. It just seems like it would have been accepted more readily. But let's get back on the topic. Do you think they should do it? Do you think that's what we ought to have on the side of cars? Ben, you haven't said anything.
I don't think that it would. I don't think they should do it for the reason that the information provided on Monroney's as it is, I feel, is conclusive enough.
But people don't pay attention to it. Let's face it, they don't.
I'd say for the bulk part, you're probably right for sure. Maybe just economy-minded vehicles, maybe vehicles that claim to be economic.
I mean, if they don't pay attention to it now, how is giving them more information going to help?
I guess for the people that care, a grading system of some type would be a big help. In the end, though, is it really going? If you want the truck with the biggest V8 because you're going to haul big trailers, or you think you are, is that going to deter you?
Oh, absolutely not.
So, yeah, I mean,
what's your alternative?
Go ahead.
Well, what's happened with the 5-star safety ring is pretty much everything that comes out now. You might as well not bring a car out unless you're going to get 5 stars.
Well, I think that's the aim here, is that they'll force manufacturers to improve their vehicles as much as they possibly can and still meet their goals. So I guess while it's a little uncomfortable that we're putting more grades on cars than we do on almost anything else that we deal in our lives, I think in the end it might be a good idea. We'll see how it turns out. We'll keep you posted here on both on MotorWeek and also on our podcast. All right, now we're going to dive into the MotorWeek mailbag. And if you've got a question you'd like answered on our podcast, please visit us at motorweek.org, and you could submit your question there. And if you've chosen, you will get a free MotorWeek T-shirt. One size fits all. Here's the question. It comes from Carla, and this is a very good one, too. Carla says, we've noticed that some cars have a fin-type antenna and believe it's because they have satellite radio. My question is, why do some cars have a very high antenna sticking up from the rear roof just over the rear window? The Prius and Mini Cooper come to mind, and they have especially high antennas. They make it difficult to park in some garages with low coverage. Older models, such as my Subaru Outback, have no exterior antenna, and the radio works just fine. Let me point out first that the fin-type antenna may be a multi-purpose antenna. antenna. It may be AM, FM, satellite GPS, radio, GPS, the whole 9 yards.
Tele-aid.
And as far as the rest of it, why do manufacturers do it?
Cost.
Styling.
It looks cool.
It looks cool. But Brian also hit on something, too, cost. The windshield antennas, my understanding, they were fairly expensive.
Right.
And she's apparently got one that works well, but a lot of them don't work that well. We heard from a lot of folks when they first came out.
Makes replacement glass a lot more money, too.
Makes replacement glass more expensive. You know, there is actually, I discovered when I saw we were going to have this question, I did a quick look at the internet. There is an actual antenna you can get to replace those antennas. And it looks like a shark fin, and it's a screw-on type. And it's there's a website called visualgarage.com, and they sell the shark fin antenna that if you've got like a Prius or a Mini Cooper, you should be able to take it, you just unscrew it and put this over it, and it will look fine.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's an awful small garage if the Prius and the Mini Cooper are having trouble getting out.
That's what came into my mind.
It's like the Mini Cooper, you can't drive. That's like driving into a crawl space underneath your house. Yeah. But, Carla, I hope they asked a question. It's really probably a manufacturers are looking for styling or something different, and I think a lot more manufacturers are going to the type of antenna you have on the window because they do. Basically, they take a lot of an appendage off the car, so you don't have to worry about car washes and a lot of other stuff.
Right, but to further answer your question, a lot of times when you see these shark fins on top of the roof or whatever, more or less they're for satellite communication and like an OnStar kind of system, if you will. And they also have a hidden radio antennas. I know in the BMWs that have the shark fins, the radio antennas are hidden across the rear fenders and across the back bumper, I believe. So they more or less have the same hidden antenna that you have for your radio as well as some satellite communication.
What you don't see anymore is on new cars is the old pole type antenna. Is anybody who's got them?
I think Wrangler.
Wrangler may be the last one. The Jeep.
A lot of the trucks do.
Some of the trucks do. Yeah,
that's true.
They're going away though very fast.
Crossover Utes too.
Well, that brings to a close our MotorWeek podcast number 42. I'd like to thank our audio engineer, Jim Bigwood, who's been instrumental in getting our podcast off the ground, our podcast creator, Bob Mixter, and also our producer, who's always here with us, Michelle Parker, the lady with the bell. And we want to thank you very much for joining us. Hope you'll join us for more MotorWeek podcasts in the future, and we hope you'll watch MotorWeek. Listen to our podcast and watch MotorWeek on public television stations nationwide. I'm John Davis for everyone at MotorWeek. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.